All right, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to Backstage with #RDM. I am your host, Russell Devin McLain, and this is the May 3rd edition of Backstage with #RDM, and I want to thank you so much for listening to the show on iHeartRadio, Stitcher Radio, TuneIn, Player FM, SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, and at RadioRandomNetwork.com. Had a great show this week. I had a chance to talk to not one, but two great guests from the country music world. First, I talked with Mr. Darryl Worley about his brand new single, Rainmaker. I also had a chance to talk with the legendary Rex Allen Jr. about his re-release of his 1982 hit, Ride Cowboy Ride. It was a great interview. With all of that said, guys, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. First guest today, Mr. Darryl Worley. He's here to talk about his brand new single, Rainmaker, which is benefiting the Fiji cyclone relief efforts. The one and only Mr. Darryl Worley. How you doing, Mr. Darryl?
Man, I'm doing good. How are y'all today?
We're doing great, friend. We're doing great. So we'll kick it right off, man. You got a new single.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Which pretty much, I guess, it was inspired by Cyclone Winston that hit the Fiji Islands in February, where you and your wife was actually there attending a songwriters meet, correct?
Yeah, we were a part of this really cool festival that was going on down there called Tunes in the Tropics, and they had a lot of folks that were coming from like Australia and New Zealand and other places to come to Fiji and have a week's vacation and listen to some music. And so I was only doing like a couple of 20 or 30 minute acoustic sets, but it wound up being a pretty eventful journey to say the least.
Yes, indeed. Well, I mean, there you were. I think it was the cyclone had hit the islands there, and it was it's supposed to be like 180 plus miles an hour winds, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, did this thing come without warning? I mean, did they see it coming, or did it just it was just like an all of a sudden type thing?
No, I knew about the storm. I was checking on it in L.A. when we were flying. We flew, it took us 4 or 5 hours to get to L.A., and then we were going to make the long journey from there to Fiji, which is about 11 and a half hours. And so I looked at the storm when we were in L.A., getting ready to fly out, and it had gone past the islands, and it hit another island, Tonga or something like that, a little south and a little west, I think, of Fiji. And it had gone past the islands and looked like everything was clear. So, when we got there, we're just ready to go. It's looking for a fun vacation time or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And it was about an hour and a half drive over to the resort we were in. And on that, the vehicle never said a word about any of that. So when we got there and everything and getting ready to go to our they're like little bungalow huts, and each person each has one. I heard these people over by the front desk, and I thought, I don't know, let me check on this. And so I just walked up and asked if they were talking about Winston, and they said, yeah. And I started to turn and walk away. I was like, oh, okay. So, and I heard one of the guys say, yeah, it's making a turn. And I spun around and I said, what kind of a turn? I said, we have a thing we call a U-turn back at home. And he goes, that's kind of what it's doing. And it turned around and came right back at us. And it didn't miss that second go around. So
wow.
It was intense, when they first projected the storm, it was coming directly at the resort where we were staying, and we literally watched it change directions. It wound up going about 100 miles north of us, thank God, and but it was really tough for the folks there. The northern edge of the island was hit hard, and it just, we got out and saw some of the countryside in the days after the storm, and it just looked like an atomic bomb had gone off. I mean, the people out in the rural areas had just lost everything, their crops, their homes, and some of even the cities were. Well, I said yesterday that they were estimating about $485 million worth of damage, and if you take that, an American dollar goes a long way down there. So you got to look at what that really means. And I don't know that they'll ever be the same. And then they're really kind people. They're just a good-hearted lot. You know, I enjoyed their company, and it takes a lot to get them down. If anything was ever going to, this would be it. But you know, we're just going to try to do our part to give something back to them. They you know, being there and experiencing that was something that I'll never forget as long as I live. And I think there was a reason we were there, and maybe this is it. Maybe we can help. You know, I hope people will, you know, see the good in this. And the song that came out of it was was not exactly what I would have expected from me. I mean, although I'm excited about the song, it just, you know, it's not a song about tragedy. It's a little more. It's more about love, and so we'll see how it goes. But I mean, we're getting a lot of good feedback right now.
Yes, indeed. That's awesome. By the way, for all the listeners out there listening, you can pick up a copy of Rainmaker on iTunes and Amazon. You can also go to DarrylWorley.com and check it out there. And with all that said, what was it like working with the co-writers on the song, Mr. Jay Brunswick and Brock Berryhill?
Man, I had written with Jay before, and he's just an incredible human being and a phenomenal songwriter. But now this was my first experience with Brock, and his talents are, I mean, I don't even know how to put it into words. I mean, this guy is so musical and so handy with all the digital electronic stuff. I mean, he had a loop built and a track going before we ever finished the song, and which is unusual for me. I don't write with a lot of those guys because I come from, you know, a different time period, I guess, and I don't have a lot of music that sounds this way. But
right,
my manager was so excited about just hearing me do something a little bit different, and she said, I think it's going to go a long way to, you know, wake people up and make people realize that we're still out here doing it. Excuse me. We took a little time to learn how to be a daddy and some other things, but that girl's big enough to ride the bus now, so we're getting back in the thick of it.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Nothing wrong with that at all. So basically, you're going to be getting back out full-time touring schedule now with this single. Can we expect an album?
Yeah, I don't know if we haven't really talked a lot about this. I'm not sure that single will be part of the album, but it was part of the setup, I guess, for the album, because we're about to come with a new greatest hits package, and we're getting pretty close on that. And so I think, you know, just having a single out there to make people sort of sit up and realize that, hey, we're still making music, and you know, if you want to go out like you said, get the download, it's not just going to help us, but it's going to help the people of Fiji. So I think it's a good program. We're going to run this thing and see what happens, and then we'll be coming next with our first volume of the greatest hits that'll also have quite a few new songs on it. So we're pretty excited about that.
Like I said, for more information, you go to DarrylWorley.com. I hope to talk to you again soon here, especially when you come out with the first half of the Greatest Hits album. We hope to have you back on and talk about that and get that out there for you as well.
Oh, man, we'll absolutely be back and chat. We appreciate you giving us some time this morning to talk about what's going on.
We appreciate you, too. The name of the single is Rainmaker. And once more time, you can go to iTunes and download it, Amazon, and also DarrylWorley.com. We're going to go ahead and let you go, buddy.
My pleasure, my friend. Take care.
It was great talking to the one and only Mr. Darryl Worley. This guy's done all kind of stuff, and he's always trying to give back. He's a hell of a patriot, really good guy, trying to help out the Fiji Islands over there with the Cyclone Relief Fund. Be sure and check out DarrylWorley.com for more information, and you can also find the official website for Darryl, as well as his social media connections as far as Facebook and Twitter in today's show notes that can be found at RadioRandomNetwork.com/May 3. That's the number 3, by the way. All right, now moving on. Like I said earlier, I had a chance to talk with the one and only Mr. Rex Allen Jr. Very funny guy, very very cool sense of humor, and it was cool talking to him, finding out about his journey in music, and also the story behind his hit, Ride Cowboy Ride, and the re-release. Let's go ahead and talk with the one and only Mr. Rex Allen Jr. Here we go. He's recorded over 50 hits like it's over.
Yeah, no. It's terrible, isn't it?
No, man. Lonely Street, Two Less People. He's got some new music. We're going to talk all about it. The one and only Mr. Rex Allen Jr. Mr. Rex.
Russell, good to talk to you.
Great to talk to you too, friend. Great to talk to you too. Man, I've been seeing your name pop up everywhere these days. You've been a very busy man. Got some new music out there. Ride Cowboy Ride, one of your new singles.
Ride Cowboy Ride is the new single, and it's a song I actually wrote back in the early '80s, and I recorded it on an album, my last album for Warner Brothers.
Really?
But it never came out or anything like that. And then I did actually. That's when discos came about in country music clubs, and so I actually did an 8-minute version of the darn thing, and I wrote 2 more verses to it and for it. And of course, nobody ever heard them. I only pressed up 120 units. There is a radio station in Fargo, North Dakota that plays it every night at midnight.
Really?
Every time I go up there in that direction, somebody from the audience comes up and sing Ride Cowboy Ride. And I said, well, sure, I can sing that. They said, no, we want the long version. I said, no.
Man, I'm ready to get out of here.
But anyway, then I went in and finally recut it. I recut it, and I've made a lot of money on this song. And part of the reason why is because it was recorded by Riders in the Sky. And everybody thought that Riders in the Sky wrote it, and they didn't. But Riders in the Sky used it as the theme song for their television show on NBC or one of those type things, a kids show that they did. And so all of a sudden these big checks start rolling in, and I figured it out. It was Ranger Doug and that bunch that had recorded it. And since then, Ride Cowboy Ride has gone on to become one of the 5 most recorded Western songs in Western music history.
Wow.
And yeah, I know, it's amazing. And so I decided to re-release it, but release it with all 4 verses. And I cut it with a group out of Kansas called the Diamond W Wranglers, which I think for my money, they're the finest Western group out there right now. And it just turned out to do really, really, the recording is wonderful, but I'm getting airplay on this thing all over the world. I mean, they're playing it in Australia, New Zealand, Europe, England, Scotland, Ireland, everywhere. It's doing real well, which is all that means is cowboy music is going to come back.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's out there. In this day and age, it seems like the barriers have been kicked down as far as music goes. You can't really tell, and I'm not trying to get controversial or anything, but really, to me, there's really no more country music. It all just seems like one genre. So I think
here's what I think. I think that I've been arguing for 20 years that there needed to be at least another chart. And there needs to be a, quote, modern country chart, and then there needs to be a classic country chart. And because, now the, quote, modern country, I don't really care for it because, I heard all the 80s rock and roll back in the 80s, and I don't need to hear it again.
Right.
But I believe what Tom Petty said. Tom Petty, his quote was, "What happened to country music?" He said, "Country music used to be an art form. It used to, when you heard a country song, you knew it was a country song. Just like, when there's a jazz song or a gospel song or something like that, you knew it was country. And now you don't, as Tom Petty says, he says, where are the new George Joneses? Where's the new Tammy Wynette's? Where's, that sort of stuff. And so I think that I've always said there needs to be another chart because radio stations are still playing classic country and those kinds of songs, and they're playing Ride Cowboy Ride.
Yes. Well, with all of that said, I mean, In the era that you grew up, would you come from a family with your dad, Rex Allen? I mean, you come from a pretty much a show business family, and
yeah. But when it comes to musical upbringing,
right?
See, I was raised with Western music. The Sons of the Pioneers and Bob Nolan and Tim Spencer and those guys, they all used to hang out at my dad's house. And Bob Nolan, Bob was a good friend, and so I grew up knowing all of those songs, and I knew the country songs too. But the West Coast was different than what was going on here in Nashville. And, that's where the Buck Owenses were on the West Coast. And that's where the Merle Haggards were on the West Coast. The Freddie Harts and the people like that. And so I grew up with all of those kind of guys. Then when I moved here, I knew who they all were, but, I wasn't exposed to their music, the Nashville scene as much as I was when I was exposed to the West Coast scene when I was growing up.
Right. Well, whenever you were growing up, who were some of the guys that kind of, I guess, influenced you?
Well, that's an easy one, and it'll surprise the heck out of you. The guy that everybody thinks that because I'm Rex Allen Jr. that, well, you wanted to sound like your dad, and no, I didn't.
Right.
The guy I admired the most, I had a Honda 150 motorcycle when I was 15 and a half years old growing up in California. And I used to get on it on Friday and Saturday nights and go down to the Sunset Strip area and sit out front of the Troubadour and listen to Hoyt Axton.
Really?
Couldn't get in. Yeah, but I'd sit outside and listen to Hoyt because Hoyt, I tried to sound like Hoyt Axton when I was a kid. And, well, part of the reason why is because Hoyt had a black Porsche and women. And I don't know any 15-year-old boy in the world that doesn't want a black Porsche and women, So I wanted to be like Hoyt. And when Hoyt was alive, I told Hoyt that story. He says, please don't tell anybody that. It makes me sound too old.
Yes, indeed. And for those of you out there that aren't familiar with Hoyt Axton, he was a singer-songwriter. I guess he would be classified pretty much as kind of some would call him maybe in this a folk singer, maybe.
Yeah, I would think Hoyt was a folk singer and a folk rock. I mean, he wrote everything from Greenback Dollar to Jeremiah was a bullfrog.
Yes,
indeed.
That
sort of stuff.
Yes.
So Hoyt was a great singer and a great writer and a really nice guy. His mother was Mae Axton, who wrote "Since My Baby Left Me,
right.
I Found a New Place to Dwell." So he comes from good stock,
Most definitely. Well, with all of that said, man, I told you I was going to keep you 10 minutes, and we're over the 10-minute mark. I don't want to.
Sorry.
I don't want to hold you up. Do you have a few more minutes to talk to me?
Sure, go ahead. Let's talk.
All right, man. Well, with all of that said, I mean, we talked about Hoyt Axton. That was your, this is one of the guys that was, or the main guy that pretty much influenced you.
I liked Hoyt a lot. I always did.
Most definitely. Well, tell us a little bit about there is actually a Rex Allen Day.
Yes, Rex Allen Days is they started it in 1954, 52, and I started going in 1954. And while my father was alive, he died in 1999, in December of 99. It was in the Guinness Book of World Records as being the longest town celebration to honor an entertainer in the world. And it's still going on. I think this will be the 68th year, and I'll be out there for it in the first weekend in October. And there's a rodeo and a big parade, and they declared an open city. That means you could walk down the street with a beer can and not get arrested. So it's really wonderful. It's a lot of fun. I do 2 shows out there. I'm doing the shows there October 1st, and I do them in a little theater, and it's very intimate and warm and kind of like what Dad wanted. But there's a museum there. There's of course a lot of probably 2/3 of it is Dad's stuff, and 1/3 of it is mine from my career.
That's awesome.
And yeah, it's really cool. And of course, I wrote the state song for the state of Arizona, so now they'll let me be buried there. So that's good.
Yes, indeed. With all of that said, man, you also dabbled a little bit in acting. In your time?
I've done a little of that. I do actually more commercials than anything else. I have done tons of commercials. I'm the guy that did Me and my RC, me and my RC, because what's good enough for other folks ain't good enough for me and my RC. And if you go rent the movie, or it's on about once every 2 months now, the Jim Carrey movie, Me, Myself, and Irene, I'm the guy that says, meet Charlie Bailey Gates of the Rhode Island State Police. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Poor Charlie.
That's right.
So
you were the commentator.
I was the narrator, yeah, and I do that. I've done things for the BBC and commercials, every kind of beer and ag chem product in the world. I've got ag chem commercials running now and WD-40 commercials, and so I do a lot of commercial work. Yeah,
that's right. Well, Mr. Rex, look, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and plug your website for more information about Rex.
www.rexallenjr.com. Yeah.
That's right.
I sure hope I get up to see you soon.
I sure hope you do, my friend. And by the way, real quick before we go, Mr. Rex, I just want to mention for everybody to go to something. One of my favorite things I found on YouTube, and it's out there on YouTube, and I'm sure you can find it elsewhere. But it's called "Where Are All the Heroes" by Rex Allen Jr.
"Where Are the Heroes" is a great. It's one of my favorite songs, and actually, that's the first video I did. And it's on, I actually have a YouTube channel.
That's it.
The Rex Allen Jr. channel. And Where Are the Heroes is there. And folks, go look at it and listen to the song. It'll tug at your heart.
Most definitely. Well, Mr. Rex, I want to thank you so much for calling in. It was an honor and an extinct pleasure to sit here and talk to you this afternoon.
It was great to talk to you, too. Have a great day.
You too, Mr. Rex. You see, I told you it was a great show, and I told you you would enjoy it, and I know you did. I want to thank you so much for tuning in here today and checking out the interviews from this week's broadcast of Backstage with #RDM. You can listen to the show on iTunes, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and also at RadioRandomNetwork.com. And all of the links that we talked about on today's show can be found in the show notes for this episode of Backstage with #RDM. Just simply go to RadioRandomNetwork.com/May3. That's MAY and the number 3. It's that easy. I want to send a big shout out to the respected management teams for both Mr. Darryl Worley and Mr. Rex Allen Jr. for hooking up the interview for the show this week. It was great talking with them. We're about out of time here, and be sure and tune in next Tuesday night, 7:05 Central Standard Time, to Backstage with #RDM on the Radio Random Network. My special guest is going to be Mr. Danny Shirley from the Confederate Railroad. He's going to be there talking about their brand new album, I'm Still Alive, and also their brand new 2016 tour where they're announcing dates and everything else. We're going to talk to him about all that great stuff. Be sure and rate and review the show on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. It helps with the algorithms. And if you would like to donate monetarily to the Radio Random Network, it's real simple. All you have to do is go to RadioRandomNetwork.com and click on the Patreon banner on the sidebar. And if it's not up yet, it should be up really soon. That helps with the monthly fees and all that good stuff. I mean, you can become a Patreon by just donating $1 a month, and it certainly does help. It helps keeps the show free for all of the listeners out there to enjoy. All right, gang, that's it for today's show. Be sure to tune in next Tuesday for Mr. Danny Shirley of Confederate Railroad at 7:05 Central Standard Time. You can check today's show notes for all the links and everything that we talked about. With that said, thank you for subscribing. Thank you for listening. And I sure hope you enjoyed it. I'm Russell Devin McLain, and you've been listening to Backstage with #RDM right here on the Radio Random Network. We will talk to you next week. Godspeed.